You're watching Scriptease. In today's episode, we'll be breaking down a scene from Parasite. You can expect spoilers for the whole film and mature language. In a story, the high point is only as good as the low point. You need to craft an exceptionally low point to make the soaring heights that your protagonist achieves even more marked. Essentially, you want to beat your protagonist down into the muck so that when they eventually rise back out of it, it's that much more rewarding. Picture a day when you've been out working, maybe you were out in the freezing cold or doing hard labor. And then you get home, you have a beautiful hot shower, a hearty meal, and curl up to play a game or watch a show. It feels magnificent because your body has jumped from its tiring extreme to pure relaxation. It feels great because you earned it. That's what you're trying to do for your protagonist. You want the low to be very low, so that when they're at their high, the disparity is dramatized, and the audience understands that they've earned it. Contrast is the key to anything after all, the juxtaposition of two vastly different states connected only by your story. In the traditional three-act structure, the low point comes at the end of the second act. After having struggled to achieve their goal throughout the entirety of the second act, the protagonist's way of life proves insufficient for overcoming the obstacles in their way. They get beaten down. Despite all their efforts, their goal seems further away than ever. In this moment, the protagonist will be offered a new philosophy that might allow them to succeed. Whichever philosophy they choose, the protagonist is tested in Act 3 in the climax. Either their choice is proven correct and they succeed, or they choose not so wisely and they succumb to their weakness. Parasite, despite being unconventional in many ways, closely follows the three-act structure. After lying his way into a new job opportunity, Ki-woo gets the rest of the Kim family jobs. The family weasels their way into caretaking roles for the Park family and, while struggling to do so throughout the second act, they eventually succeed. A twist in the second act upsets this happy equilibrium and threatens the Kims' place. As they scramble to evade detection by the Parks while subduing the hideaway couple Moon Gwang and Oh Gwen-se, the Kims realize they haven't achieved the wealth, status, or comfort that they really desired. This leads to the end of Act 2, their low point. Let's look at how this sequence plays out in the screenplay for Parasite. We'll join in just after Da-hae has left the living room and Yong-kyo and Dong-ik decide to sleep on the couch to keep an eye on Da-song. The previous sequence has been alternating parts suspense and action, as the Kims have been hiding from the Parks and fighting with the hideaway couple. To keep the pace of the film dynamic, the next sequence is quiet, relaxed even. The Kims are entirely still, concealed beneath the coffee table. This transition from nervous energy to relaxation is mediated by scenic respite in the action text. It's picturesque, the teepee emitting a pleasant orange glow, against the backdrop of beautiful trees, seen through the shimmering veil of pouring rain. This step back, plus the calm demeanor of the Parks, tells us that even though the Kims are still concealed, they're not really at risk of being found. This leads the Parks to openly discuss the Kims, oblivious to the fact that they're only mere feet away. In this moment, all the paranoid thoughts the Kims had about how the rich viewed them become reality. Even in the setup of the scene, the Parks are physically above the Kims. The Parks are rested, safe inside their house, while the Kims lay awake in fear. This image here is a perfect contrast to the Kims' high point. Earlier on, we saw the Kims sprawled out in the lounge room, beer and snacks littering the floor as they fantasized about their lives among the wealthy. As Ki-taek put it, this is our house right now, nice and cozy. But it was never really their house. They never really belonged there, as we now see with the Kims sequestered below the table. The Parks discuss the Kims with a kind of dismissive disgust. It's more of a distant curiosity than any real concern. This idea is embodied by the symbol of smell, a lingering presence created by the Kims' poverty that pervades and upsets the rich lifestyle of the Parks. It just creeps into the back seat and surrounds you. The constant questioning on the exact nature of the smell provides some repetition here, with each missed guess stabbing forward, the Kims taking hit after hit. Iterating on an idea like this is a great way to stick a moment inside the audience's mind. The crossing the line notion is another motif that repeats throughout the screenplay. Dong-ik's idea of crossing the line pretends to value the respectful distance of a professional relationship, but in reality, it's just about the poor knowing their place. Dong-ik wants to maintain a hierarchy in which Ki-taek, the poor, remain below himself, the rich. This excuse crumbles later on, when Dong-ik asks Ki-taek to play the part of an Indian at Da-song's birthday party. This is a clear breach of their professional relationship. As Dong-ik would say, it crosses the line. Though it doesn't make it into the final film, in the screenplay, Ki-taek specifically makes this point in the moment. "Mr. Park, I think you went over the line." The crossing the line motif perfectly tracks Ki-tek's mental state as he grows closer and closer to snapping and killing Dong-ik. In the end, it's Ki-tek that crosses the line completely. This next scintillating section sees the Parks getting frisky on the couch. Apart from getting the viewer hooked back in by making their blood pump, this section extends on the idea of how the rich see the poor. The desire for cheap panties shows that it's not just the poor that fantasize about being rich, but the reverse is true as well. There's an escapism which all people indulge in, regardless of their status. To the Parks, there's something exciting about being poor. Maybe it's the lack of facade, the lack of constraint. It's more animalistic. It's no wonder we use words like dirty or filthy to refer to sex. The point of this previous scene was showing how the rich see the poor. And that's incredibly relevant, because the Kim's goal is to become rich. They're seeing how the other side lives, how the other side views them. Let's say you want to be an artist, and some established artist comes along and drops their opinion of you. You're gonna take it to heart. If they praise you, you'll be over the moon. But if they criticize you, your soul will shrivel into itself and die, and you'll cry yourself to sleep. Probably. Just guessing. Anyways, this whole scene is the perfect way for the Kims to find that out, giving them a reality check and plunging them right back down to where they were. A heavy fatigue comes over Ki-tek's face. Time passes slowly. Having realized they're out of place, we have a short scene where the Kims escape the house. But just before that, Ki-tek almost gets caught. A strong beam of light suddenly penetrates the living room. Ki-tek quickly flattens himself on the floor. This moment was foreshadowed in the high point of the film. Remember back when the Kims were spread out in the lounge room? And then Chung-suk said, "You're cozy, huh? That's real nice. What if Park comes back right now?" He would skitter away like a little cockroach. And she was right. Forced to hide under furniture when the owner of the house comes home and fleeing from light, even flattening himself on the floor in a desperate attempt to escape detection. It's a small part of this scene, but it shows how at this point Ki-tek still isn't willing to fight back. He just lays down and takes it. Literally. Now we have a sequence which in the final film is just beautifully done for so many reasons. There's a great video by Thomas Flight which partly looks at this scene, how the Kims are constantly moving down, away from the Park's mansion, away from prosperity. The screenplay may not have the luxury of explicitly detailing each shot here, but it gets the feeling across, and that's what we're after. We have our basic techniques on show here, like word choice, trudge, gloomy, or this line which is great, rain drowns the silence. But what I really want to focus on is this section. They don't bother going into a store to buy an umbrella. They don't bother hailing a cab. They just walk, their faces steeped in anguish. The first two lines here break common screenplay rules. They're unfilmable. You can't film someone not doing something. But let's take off our little hard hats and stop thinking about screenplays as blueprints for just one moment. The point of this moment is to capture an emotion, and this little bit of prose writing does just that. Even when I'm reading it out loud, I feel the tiredness of the Kims. I feel their depression. I reflect on the night they've had. They're empty, as is captured by this line. Out of breath, we see them as silhouettes. Even in this state though, Ki-tek holds his ground. When his kids look to their dad for guidance, Ki-tek rises to the challenge. Ki-tek sounds like a real father, firm, reassuring. I know what I'm doing. Daddy has a plan. So you two just erase everything that happened today from your memory. The two kids have seemed so mature this whole time, but they still need their dad to hold them together. And this is where a key technique of the low point comes into play. Beating down your characters. You have to be truly mean to them to take away everything so that they're forced to change. Even with their newfound jobs threatened, their dignity destroyed and soaked to the bone, the Kims get hit down again when they find that their semi-basement home has been flooded. The rain looks depressing, sure, and it serves numerous plot points, but it also has symbolic significance. The Kims are getting spat on from above. The poor are getting assaulted from on high by the rich over and over again, and just like the rain, it's the unavoidable nature of their circumstances. It's a relentless downpour. When the Kims get to their house and start trying to salvage what they can, it's the worst thing that they could have possibly imagined. The script foreshadows this moment with sound. Unsettling music creeps in over the rain. They hear shouting, sirens in the distance. And then we get that technique we've seen so many times before for revealing a surprise. The M dash, the new line, and in this case, an exclamation mark just to keep things saucy. The sentences here are short and punchy. We get the idea that they're quick, hurried shots trying to capture the craziness of the moment. Total pandemonium, sewage backflows. Ki-taek stares in horror. He hurries towards the apartment. One of the key reasons I think that Parasite sticks in the viewer's mind is the ludicrous, unusual imagery, and that too is on showcase even in this low moment. We have Ki-young sitting on the altar toilet, which is, quote, spewing shit like an Icelandic geyser, end quote. In the script, Ki-taek picks up a live king crab, a surreal find in his house. And of course, we have Ki-woo, who picks up the viewing stone. The viewing stone is another obvious symbol throughout the film, an object which reminds Ki-woo of his aspirations towards prosperity, a precious treasure. As with the smell and crossing the line symbols, the viewing stone also recurs here as a kind of checkpoint. The viewer is prompted to ask themselves where Ki-woo's aspirations are at this low point. In the next scene, the final of this sequence, Ki-woo is tightly holding the viewing stone. He's clinging to it like a sailor might cling to a life preserver. In the midst of this chaos, Ki-woo only has his dreams and the protection of his dad, but that soon abandons him as well. Ki-taek delivers a monologue that tears down Ki-woo's hopes, that submits to the futility of their situation, a monologue that shows from here on, Ki-taek has given up all thoughts of escaping poverty. Ki-taek's face is cold and emotionless.
절대 실패하지 않는 계획이 만절하네. 무계획이야, 무계획. No plan. 왜냐? 계획을 하면 반드시 계획대로 안 되거든, 인생이. 여기도 봐봐. 이 많은 사람들이 오늘 떼거지로 체육관에서 잡시다 계획을 했었겠냐? 근데 지금 봐. 다 같이 마룻바닥에서 저자고 있잖아. 우리도 그렇고. 그러니까 계획이 없어야 돼, 사람은. 계획이 없으니까 뭐가 잘못될 일도 없고, 또 애초부터 아무 계획이 없으니까 뭐가 터져도 다 상관없는 거야. 사람을 죽이건 나라를 팔아먹건 시발 다 상관없다 이 말이지. 알겠어?
There's a hostility in his voice. Ki-woo is scared. He's never seen his father like this. Ki-woo has been offered an alternate philosophy, one that scares him because it suggests giving up his aspirations and accepting the place in society that he was born into. And all of this is coming from a person he's relied upon for so long. Father figures are meant to be a source of sound advice, so what does it mean when we feel like they're leading us astray? Ki-woo hugs the rock more tightly. I'm going to make it right. In this, the low point of the story, Ki-woo rejects his father's ideology and decides to keep working towards his dream. The two's paths diverge, and this moves us into the film's third act. The script for Parasite makes the low point of the film clear in three key ways. Firstly, we see the pride before the fall, as the Kims lounge around the Parks' mansion. Secondly, the Kims' situation gets progressively more dire, which is reflected in not only the degrading situation, but in the word choice as well. These three ideas are signposts of the film's low point, and they all come across in the script, long before the weepy soundtrack, dark visuals, and somber facial expressions of the final film. Good writing, and good luck.